Colin Kaepernick is from Turlock, California. It's a small city in the Central Valley. It's a place in America that was made famous by the stories of the novelist and playwright John Steinbeck. And so many of his works were tragic tales. Books like Of Mice and Men or The Grapes of Wrath. So it's only fitting that Colin Kaepernick himself would be the star in his very own epic tragedy that's unfolding right now. Now, I call it a tragedy. Some people are quite angry at him for what's happened. And if you don't know the background, Colin Kaepernick is star quarterback, the San Francisco 49ers. And he made the decision just a couple days ago not to stand for the traditional national anthem that's played before every football game. Now, I guess he had been doing this, but he hadn't been suited up. And this time he did it in uniform, and it's drawing quite a bit of press coverage, and people are talking about it on both sides of this issue. Unfortunately, the real victim, and there is a victim in this story, although Kaepernick, at the press conference, when asked why he did it, he said he didn't do it because he's not going to stand and appreciate a country that oppresses black and brown people and that there's blood and bodies in the streets, obviously referring to the much publicized police killings. The ones that have been publicized in particular have been police killings of black men. I really feel for Colin Kaepernick. I can really identify with him in a lot of ways. As a man of mixed race myself, coming up around the same time as him, I do understand that this country and its peculiar relationship with ideas of race demands a lot of you when you are of mixed race. Now, myself, my father is black, my mother is Mexican. For him, his father is black, his mother is white. Now, both of my parents were in my life, thankfully. Colin's story is a little bit different, and the tragedy really starts there. His mother was 19 when she got pregnant. His father just basically left the scene. So she put the baby up for adoption. This was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He was adopted by a white family, the Kaepernick family. That's the name that he has. And he was raised as the youngest of 3 sons. They already had 2. And when he was very young, they moved out to Turlock, California. Now, Turlock is, as I said, a pretty rural, traditionally farming community. It's split pretty good, white and Mexican, or white and Latino, I'll say. It's under 1% black. So Colin was living in this environment as basically the darker son of a white couple. And he's spoken in the press about, his early internal struggle and internal beginning to come to awakening about race was not all that positive, where he would walk into a place, say a restaurant, a public place with his parents, and people would look and see, oh, well, what's the deal with this kid? I mean, this is obviously not their biological child. And him understanding and feeling different. And I can definitely, I can empathize and understand how that would be a difficult situation. And how not just not knowing who your parents were, but then having this additional racial aspect. Nonetheless, though, it's pretty clear that the home that was provided for him by the Kaepernick family was, if not loving, I can't go into all of that, it was at least stable, because this guy was a 3-sport athlete, played sports all the way through his childhood, through high school, was a very accomplished 3-sport athlete, a star of all of his teams and a 4.0 GPA student. That's pretty hard to accomplish if they're in a broken home. And then he went on, of course, to be a very high draft pick, picked up by a great team, and then actually took them to a Super Bowl. And this is where the tragedy really begins. And all tragedies start sad, and then they have an uplifting aspect, and the real tragedy of it is that it turns right back on itself. Because here's a young man, successful, has had all of the privileges that go along. Forget about race, right? Forget about an idea of white privilege. Forget about any of that. Has had all of the privileges that go along with being a star athlete for your entire life. There's very few positions of privilege that compare to that, and especially a quarterback in American football. But the article that I read that really showed me what a tragedy this is and gave me some insight into it is by Sean King. But gotta call him a snake because he is a snake. One of the founders of Black Lives Matter. Now writer for the New York Post, among other places. He's really spun it out into quite a profitable business, the race baiting. And in that article, he goes to compare Colin to Muhammad Ali and the black Olympic athletes who famously threw up the black power fist on the medal stand. And in that article, he mentions that he had become friends with Kaepernick over the last year online. And if you go and check out Kaepernick's Twitter, you can see that he has most recently been retweeting, in particular, a whole bunch of really race-baiting propaganda. And that's a shame. It's a real shame because here's a young man, privileged, blessed, who, unlike so many athletes, entertainers, celebrities, you can tell genuinely wants to do something and genuinely is seeking to find and identify that aspect of him which, unfortunately, he was denied. You know, it's that piece, that missing piece of a man anyway, to really be seeking out his father. And that seeking of the father is the crux of so many tragedies. And in seeking that out, it's so unfortunate. And it makes me so glad that my own father was in my life. And that those questions, I didn't have to deal with those questions, that I always understood the black heritage that I had, that I was then able to go off and go and be even more educated, at a historically black university. And there was positives and negatives to that, and you take it with a grain of salt. But at least to be able to have that opportunity, this is an opportunity that this young man never had. And so in seeking to do that, he made a move. A tragic move. Because he got co-opted. See, the comparison to Ali is accurate in that Ali, if you don't know, Muhammad Ali, and many people don't know this part of his story, but I think that it's one of the things that really set him apart. After he became a Muslim, he had a lot of the Nation of Islam people around him and in his ear. And it's hard to really know exactly how it shook out, but he was actively and vocally against the Vietnam War, as were a great many black activists during the time of the war, Martin Luther King in particular. But where King and Muhammad Ali separated was, King, and I'm not a huge supporter of his for everything that he did, but I am on this point, and I think this is the point that got him killed. King was really anti-military industrial complex. He was anti-war. He was taking a stand against the Vietnam War, yes, as a black man, but as a man. Muhammad Ali ended up, his draft number came up. He refused to step forward and be inducted. In other words, he refused to be drafted. He was arrested, charged with a felony crime, tried, sentenced to 5 years in prison, stripped of his belt, stripped of his license to box, but he knew this going in. He knew that by not being inducted, that he was going to lose the heavyweight championship of the world that he had worked for. And this is not a man who had had all of the blessings of coming up a sports star his whole life. This is not a man who was raised in relative comfort in Turlock, California. This is a dude coming up broke and poor and scrabbling his way up in Louisville. And through his own hard work and determination, becoming the heavyweight champion of the world. And he was willing to lose that. Now, here's the thing. Muhammad Ali was on the right side of history. He was on the right side of history. The Vietnam War was wrong. When they asked him why he wouldn't go and be drafted, he said, I ain't got no problem with those Viet Cong. Furthermore, in further interviews, he said that it was, as a Muslim, that he wasn't going to do it, and he wasn't going to, much in the same way that Kaepernick is trying to get at, that he wasn't going to go over there because it wasn't going to help the black people here. And that if him going over there was actually going to improve the lot of black people, they wouldn't need to draft him because he'd volunteer. Now that shows some principle. Now, maybe it's a wrong principle because it's saying, well, I would go off to war. I would go and kill other people if it helped this particular group of people. And I think that that's where the tragedy of this situation happens. Because here you have Colin Kaepernick, who is actually, if you look at his life is an example of where America goes right when it comes to race. Where it goes right. Here's a white family who takes in a black child, as much of their own as they possibly could. Not divided, united. Raise him in such a way that he's able to rise to a cultural level where he has the platform. Where he has the platform to possibly make some social change. And what does he do? He falls in with those dividers. So here's the thing. Yes, Colin, the police do oppress black people. And they oppress brown people, and they oppress yellow people, and they oppress white people because the police are a tool of oppression. Because they are an armed wing of the state. You can probably hear the planes flying above me. It brings to mind this fact. Here we have Kaepernick upset about bodies in the street, but yet more than happy to play football on TV and get paid while ads for the Air Force and the Navy and the Marines and the Army run right up against the game. He's more than happy to be a tool for recruitment, for putting bodies in the street of people all over the world of every race. He's more than happy to do that. Because you know what? To take the real stand wouldn't be so easy. To take the real stand, you wouldn't get the backup of the hashtaggers on Twitter and then be able to call everyone that disagrees with you a racist. To take the real stand, to say, I want a peaceful world. And how about this? I refuse to play, and I am turning back my contract until all of the military ads are off from the NFL. Until the NFL drops the military as a sponsor, which is putting bodies of brown and black people around the world in the streets, which is making the world less free. Until they do that, I am willing to give up my contract and not play, because I will not be a recruiting tool for the state. I will not be a recruiting tool and a tool to oppress people around the world, not just my own people. I'm doing it for my people, starting here. Because you know what, Colin? We're all your people. You, of all people, should know that.